We'll start. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am now calling the, believe it or not, October 2018 Village of Ossining Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing to order. I ask you to please turn off your cell phones. For those in the audience, please do not engage in activities that may distract from the board or the applicants or their respective representatives. Please do not engage in loud or extended conversations during the proceedings. Any conversation by audience members should be conducted outside the hearing room. At the end of the applicant's presentation, the public will be given an opportunity to speak on relevant issues involving the application. We want to stress to you that these are public hearings. You must give your name and address clearly, and I'm emphasizing the clearly right now, so that we can make sure that it's part of the minutes. As you know, we've changed the way that the meeting happens now. We open up each individual item, we close that item, and we vote on that item. So some of these tonight will not be public hearings. Some of them are more informational hearings, or informational sessions, I should say. I want to get the terminology correct. So I thank you for coming, and we're going to start. We'll expect our other members here shortly. ZBA 0218 49 Spring Street. Now, as far as I know, no additional information was given to the planning department or the building department.
Not this month.
Last month?
Last month, and then in response to the letter that we received
Right.
from the Friends, I did get today from Mr. Corky.
But that was
response.
today.
That was today, and we only got it, and that's true. But otherwise, I think, JD, there may have been something you provided, was it last month for the different plans, or are we still working on the same set of plans?
We haven't changed the last submittal,
Okay.
which was reduced in the number of bedrooms and the number of parking required. That was the last submittal that we have done.
Okay, and we should just remind everyone, last month, we only had three members. We were supposed to only have 3 members of the board. We had 4, but we adjourned quite a few items. So we'll let you make your presentation, and we'll.
Okay. Well, since we were in front of the
You
board.
need to talk, first of all,
Yep.
you need to give your name and address, and you need to talk into the microphone.
J.B. Hernandez, architect for the project.
Your address, sir?
100 Executive Boulevard, Suite 204.
Thank you.
Awesome. So we did our presentation last to the board, and we, recognized some of the challenges that we have. We did change and reduce the footprint of the building. So we did move it 8 feet further away from the aqueduct in the back. Also, we reduced the number of bedrooms that we needed, therefore we reduced the number of parking spaces required, and we reduced the retail as well. So the total number of parking spaces that we require now is 20, and the setback towards the aqueduct is 8 feet now, where it used to be 0. Part of the building was touching the aqueduct in the back. Now we have a conformity of 8 feet across, which hopefully, if there is people walking here, will give more room there to walk along the building. Then there's also questions about the aqueduct.
Good evening, Robert Corky, 11 Lakeview Road, Ossining, attorney for the applicant. I did receive a letter today from Mr. Kahan, a letter written October 4th. I don't know when the village received it, but if you're going to consider that letter, I'd like the opportunity to respond to it. I did respond in writing to Mr. Kahan. If you're not considering it, I have nothing else to say.
So I would suggest that you respond to that letter.
Okay, thank you. All right. First of all, I'm a supporter of the aqueduct. I've walked the aqueduct for years. I used to live on Audubon Drive, which abutted the aqueduct. My kids went to the Ossining schools and all took part of what was at that point in time social studies. He was a teacher in Ossining schools, Carl Osher. You may or may not know Carl. Carl was one of the authors of the old aqueduct, Old Croton Aqueduct Guide, and took all their kids and therefore parents on the hikes of the aqueduct. So I found it a fascinating asset to our community. I think it speaks to the history of our country, immigration. I think it speaks to the history of development and using of resources in the country. So I'm a very strong supporter of the aqueduct. I say that just to make it clear where I'm coming from on this. I don't believe that the project proposed by my client impacts the use or benefit of the aqueduct. I think there were a number of issues raised in the Croton letter that are not correct. There were allegations that I misled the board and made statements that were untrue. I don't think that's true. I only presented documents to the board. Those documents speak for themselves. They're maps produced by the state of New York, as well as by the New York State Department of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. I didn't make it up. It's all state documents. Also, you also may recall the first meeting I attended, I raised the issue of the fence on the aqueduct to the board and said it was dangerous and recommended that it be removed. I'm glad to see that it appears now that action will be taken to remove the fence so there is access from Waller Avenue over the aqueduct. Hopefully that also will lead to the aqueduct being better maintained. However, as to the specific allegations in the letter, you may recall that I did provide a walker's guide, a copy of this to the board for every member. That walker's guide has maps and walking tours indicated in it. It's very clear, if you go to page 9 of the guide, that it tells you how to walk from Maple farther south on the aqueduct, and actually has a drawing showing that the actual aqueduct is not under the trail. Now, I got more involved with this than I had thought when this matter began, and started looking into issues of the aqueduct, the historic background of the aqueduct, how it's used by various municipalities, the state, etc. I spoke to the regional director of the Taconic State Park Commission about the issues on the aqueduct that he sees and the usage of it. There are two things, and I didn't know because we use them synonymously at times. There is the Old Croton Aqueduct, a National Historic Registered Site. That is not the Aqueduct Trail. The aqueduct was created in 1847 to 1852. The trail was purchased by the state in 1986. No, excuse me, 1968. If that's historic, I'm antiquity. It's not part of what was done. Then I said, well, let me just be sure about this. And I really felt like I was in graduate school here. I went back and I was able to find the actual application to make the Old Croton Aqueduct a nationally registered historic site. I provided copies to Mr. Kahan. It's not the trail, it's the aqueduct, okay? So they're used interchangeably, but they're two different things. Why is this important? Well, I made issue, or I took issue with the language of the statute when we first began this exercise. My position was that the statute says you have to be set back from the aqueduct. And the aqueduct trail, at the back of the property referenced here, this is not the aqueduct, that's the aqueduct trail. The aqueduct is on Spring Street. So the statute, if you take it literally, and I apologize for being a literalist, it goes against my nature, but if you do take it literally, there is no issue back there pursuant to the statute. If it was the statute's intent to leave a walkway, clearing way, etc., I think it would have said so. And I think the village over the last numbers of years would have done so. They wouldn't have put a gate up there, okay? So I don't think that was the intent of the statute. I didn't make this up. I did provide maps to the board that show where the aqueduct runs. Not only in Ossining, but in the towns going all the way down to the Bronx. The aqueduct veers off the trail. Why? That perplexed me. It's one of those things, I said, well, why does it do this? I can't talk to the engineers, they're long gone. I don't have the plans. But when I did look at the application, and I referenced this in my memo to Mr. Kahan, it talks about why and how they made certain design aspects. And they were always talking about it's gravity fed, and they had to keep it at a certain pitch, and they had to do whatever. I didn't have time today to get a topographical of Waller and Maple. But I'm going to take a guess that the reason that it goes like that, and it's a guess, a hypothetical on my part, taking it from reading the application, that the design was that way because they have vents along the way. There's a vent in Nelson, there's a vent farther up. I think there's actually one every mile. And that was to assure the flow of the water. I think it went down to Spring Street because that's the way it went because of the gravity feed. How can I prove that? Right, I can't. It's my hypothesis, reading a number of articles about it, reading the engineering reports, reading the application for the National Historic Site, which talks about why and how it was designed. So, number one, the aqueduct isn't there, not by what I say, but by what the state of New York says, and by what the Taconic State Park Commission says in their documents. And it's not a recent thing that this detour was created by the feds. This document was done during the Cuomo administration in the 80s, which delineated that the walking tour of the aqueduct went down Maple to Spring and down farther. It wasn't because of a fence that was put up by someone whenever the heck they did it. So that's incorrect. I just want to make that clear. It's not there, not by what I said, but by what the state says. I had hypothesized again, because I don't know, the intent wasn't there, that the setback was related maybe to not wanting to disturb the construction of the aqueduct. That someone digging close by might actually do damage to a historic site. The fact that the historic site isn't there sort of does away with that issue as to 49 Spring Street. So I think I will send additional copies of my memo to Mr. Kahan, or ask him to share it with the board. But my position is what it was when we began, that the statute doesn't apply to that. Thank you.
There are other zoning variances on this building too, that one being parking. So you lessen the units, you lessen the commercial property space, but yet you're still not providing any parking for this building.
Yes, one of the reasons that we're not able to provide parking is that if you put parking in here, I mean, first of all, you only put like 4 parking spaces, and it will eliminate the whole base of the property. The width of the property, and the proximity to the bus stop is not conducive to have a.
I just want to bring that up, that
Yeah.
is another variance that you're looking for. Is there any other variances? I don't have that paper in front of me, but
I think it's 2 variances.
2 variances.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone here, we want to make sure that we don't keep bringing people back and back on meetings. Is there anyone here that wants to speak on 49? 49 Spring Street. Yeah. You need to come up to the microphone. You need to give your name and address.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Kelsey. I'm the co-head of Walks and Tours for the Friends of the Old Croton Aqueduct. I spend a lot of time here in Ossining, leading tours, doing weir tours. We have one this Saturday if anybody's interested at 10 o'clock. And I live in Irvington at 36 Maple Street.
Thank you, ma'am. And you had some comments to make?
Yes, I did. In our letter, we tried to sort out the confusion that I believe the applicant has about which thing is the thing that Austening's law is concerned about. Because I agree with the applicant that there are two different things. Usually, on a good day, they're in the same place, which is the actual pathway of the aqueduct, which is 26 miles in Westchester. Usually, the trail is right on top of it. However, there are some places where, for various reasons, there have been detours, usually because the land has been taken over by somebody else, and so the trail skirts around that little part and then goes back on. We have a map which we passed out to the members of the board, and which we make available to the public. We designed the thing, and unlike the state park map that's up on the state park website, which only shows the trailway, and that's because people are interested in going on the trail. This map, which is very dear to my heart, we recently updated it in June. It shows the actual path of the old Croton Aqueduct, which is the National Historic Landmark here, that's protected in many villages, including Ossining. Did my mic go off? Okay, good. Then, alongside of this, there's a red line, and the red line shows where people can still walk. And so usually the red line coincides with the yellow line, but in Ossining, there is a detour. So the red line leaves the yellow line and then comes back as soon as it can, because the whole idea of the trailway is to be walking on top of this historic landmark, which was the aqueduct that first brought fresh water to New York City and enabled it to become the city it is. People are very excited, and they love going down inside the aqueduct, which they can do only in Ossining at the weir. So the law in Ossining is protecting the actual aqueduct itself, not the trail. So where is the actual aqueduct where we're talking about? It is clear from the tax maps that were used in the application that the aqueduct.
You're
Property.
directing to the board.
Okay,
so,
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm used to public speaking, and I usually turn around in a circle
That's okay.
until I get dizzy. The aqueduct is right behind the property. It's clearly marked on Ossining's tax map as being the Croton Aqueduct tax property. And it's that property that's protected, not detours.
Okay.
In fact, we're really, really excited that the village has seen fit to remove the fences that were at either end. They just did it last week. Remove the fences that were at either end of the Waller to Maple segment, which is directly behind 49. So now it's very beautiful. The citizens of Ossining and everybody exploring the trail can stay on the trail and not do that detour that exists on the state park map and is shown as a red line on this map. So they are now going to be able to stay on the actual old Croton Aqueduct path. But it was clear in the tax map of Ossining that that is where the old Croton Aqueduct was. If you look at our map, we show both concepts. The state park is just trying to show people where they can actually hike. So they put the line going around because they didn't want people scaling those fences.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
So just to say why we're concerned. There are many, many people that are attracted to Ossining and to the trail throughout Westchester. It's a major recreational site. it's history, it's nature, it increases the commerce in every city it passes through. People go along the trail, they stop in restaurants. It's really a great asset to Austining. And Austining has the foresight to allow for a buffer so that buildings aren't built right up to the edge, especially a tall 4-story building, so that it becomes more like a tunnel, it's more like you're going through Manhattan or something. So Austining has the foresight. There's several other villages along the way in Westchester that have the foresight to have these wonderful buffers. My village also has it, Dobbs Ferry also has it. And so what we're pleading with you to do is just follow your own very far-sighted law, which protects an asset that's very, very special in this village that has been protected by this buffer law in Austining and has a wonderful effect on Austining.
Thank you.
And so that's our plea.
Okay, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here that's to speak on 49 Spring Street? Okay, since we got this information today, some information today, and we got the letter, and we didn't have anything new come in on this, we're going to adjourn this public hearing until next month to continue it, and we're going to get advice from council on this particular issue.
Understood.
Okay, ZBA 1418, Plateau Associates, 36 Water Street.
Good evening, Madam Chair,
Good evening.
members of the board. Brad Schwartz from the law firm of Zarin and Steinmetz, 81 Main Street, Suite 415, White Plains. We represent Plateau Associates. I'm joined this evening by Nick and Peter Stellatis from Plateau. We're here tonight to provide the board with an overall update. We were last before you in August, and we went through 2 zoning variances that are required for the project, one related to New York State Village Law 7-736, and the other relating to a setback from a watercourse buffer. We also discussed an interpretation that the applicant was seeking in the first instance, that a variance was not needed, in our view, under section 7-736. So we walked through the 2 variances as well as the interpretation that we were seeking as a matter of a threshold issue. Since August, the application has continued to advance for the planning board. At the planning board's August meeting, the board deemed the supplemental final environmental impact statement complete. The planning board is now considering a draft finding statement, which we hope and anticipate the planning board will vote on at its October meeting. That finding statement completes the SEQR process. As we discussed at the last meeting, your board can't take any final action until the planning board as lead agency completes SEQR. So just like in August, we're not here tonight seeking any decision from your board. SEQR's not completed yet, but we're here to provide an update. During the planning board process, a 3rd variance was also identified relating to building width. The building width is proposed at 80 feet, and the maximum under the zoning is 75 feet. Just like the 7-736 issue, there was a question and some discussion about whether a variance was needed. There was some discussion that the planning board under the code may have the authority to grant a waiver. But what we have decided, and we've discussed this internally with our team, is for the moment, in order to try to simplify and facilitate the process before your board, we're not going to seek any interpretations at this time. We'll reserve the right to do so in the future if we need, but at this moment, the applicant's going to pursue all 3 variances from your board. Again, variance related to 7-736, the watercourse buffer, and building width. And the planning board also indicated at its last meeting that it would be issuing a positive referral letter to your board on those 3 variances, and we expect that letter to be issued sometime soon. So that's the overall procedural update, and we did prepare a very brief presentation I could quickly walk the board through in just a few minutes. So Jamie, if you, this is it, we can go to the first slide.
Go to that one.
Do you want me to control the mouse? Would that be easier? Or?
Happy to hand it over.
Thank you. very briefly, again, this is the proposed building. We presented this at the last meeting. It's six stories over a one-story parking garage, 137 units. This is the overall site plan. Again, the exact same plan that we presented back in August. That shows the overall site layout with the indoor parking garage as well as some outdoor parking spaces. I mentioned the three variances. The first one, again, relating to New York State Village Law 7-736. This is a two-part test. The first part is that the street giving access to the project must be shown on the village's official map. And the second prong is that the street giving access must be suitably improved to the satisfaction of the planning board. The street here is North Water Street and the North Water Street extension. There's no question that we satisfy the second prong. There have been road improvement plans submitted to the planning board, reviewed by Keller Sessions, where the applicant is proposing to improve North Water Street and its extension with a 30-foot right-of-way, 24 feet of pavement, new sidewalk, stormwater, and the like. The question was whether or not North Water Street and its extension was a street on the official map. That, again, for the moment, will sort of agree to disagree and forego the interpretation just at this time and seek the variance really from prong one of that two-part test. The second variance, again, is the water course buffer requirement, and the third variance, again, relates to the building width. This is the drawing, again, the same drawing we showed at the last meeting. The gray is the existing pavement. The red is the proposed 30-foot right-of-way within which North Water Street and its extension will be improved. We walked the board last time through the five-factor test. We also outlined the applicability of the five factors in our submission letter. I am not walking the board through each of these bullet points tonight. Suffice to say, we don't think there's any undesirable change in community character or environmental impact. The improvements to North Water Street and its extension will only be an enhancement and a benefit to all the properties down in this location. Everyone will have enhanced access to the street, and we also believe that access along North Water Street is consistent with the planning board's prior approvals, including the 1995 Filex subdivision, which created the property in question. So again, here are the five factors, and I'll defer the board again, refer the board to our submission. Second, this is the water course buffer plan. This is the proposed culvert that would satisfy for this entire stretch, 25-foot setback to the building. Here's the building line. In these two locations here on the corner, this location where the arrow is, and over here, the proposed culvert is closer than the 25-foot requirement. Here it's 17 feet, this distance here is 3 feet. So for these two locations, and again, the plan is the water coming off this hill here, currently it goes through this open water course and through a culvert underground before it discharges to the river in this location. Under the project, at this location here, the water will be rerouted to, again, a new subsurface culvert that will run this length along the arrow and then ultimately discharge in the same location as it exists today. Again, this stretch complies with zoning. It's only in these two corners for a stretch of 83 feet that does not meet the 25-foot requirement. And again, the five factors that we presented last month as to why we believe a variance is required. We're only bringing this water course into greater conformance with the zoning law. So third, and what's newly presented tonight, and we'll formally submit this to your board in advance of the next meeting, is the building width. And we presented two views, one looking east from the river and one looking west towards the river. And we believe these renderings, which were submitted to the planning board, show that this project certainly satisfies the intent of this subsection, which is to maximize visual corridors to and from the river. As you can see, the additional 5 feet makes no appreciable difference. And we've outlined again the five-factor test. No undesirable change. I'm sorry, I went backwards. It's a 6% variance. It's minor in nature. And again, no adverse environmental impact. I should mention the building has been located, it's been studied during the entire site plan process in this location in the previously developed area of the site. It's been constructed into the hillside again to minimize any view shed impacts. And it's also positioned perpendicular to the river, again, to preserve view corridors to and from the river. So this is the third variance that will be part of the application. And last, as mentioned, the next step would be for your board to ultimately vote on the application of 3 requested variances only after the planning board completes secret.
Thank you, sir. So again, this particular 36 Water Street was not a public hearing because we're just at the presentation stage of the whole thing. All right, thank you very much. There's no one here else to speak on 30. It's really not a public hearing, so we'll leave it at that. We don't have the-
Frankly, we were most interested in any questions or feedback from the zoning board that we could then put into our next submission and answer before we come back again. We would
I think we need to look it over and submit them through the Corporation Council, or our attorneys on this particular one, which is,
Jim
we need
Staff's
to-
office, McCullough
Yeah.
Goldberg and Staff.
so we'll take care of it. We'll send you the questions that way, any questions that we may have.
Terrific.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. New business of the board, ZBA, 1818, 78 Prospect Avenue. Sir, give your name and address, please.
I already had it planned. My name is Otis Curtis, and I reside at 53 Bellevue Avenue in Ossining, New York.
Thank you, sir.
So as mentioned by Madam Chair at the beginning, that the ZBA meeting, due to quorum concerns, had some applicants defer to this meeting. That was my circumstance. I also had an ARB meeting in the interim, whereby they suggested that I needed to replace the 2 cars worth of parking that are associated with 53 Bellevue as part of the plan related to 53 Bellevue. And so this application here, as originally applied for, was really linked only to 78 Prospect. And so I didn't want to waste the time trying to talk about 53 Bellevue, but I at least have written proposals of 2 plans that we may not be able to entertain, but I at least can hand them out so that it could be relevant for either some level of discussion or initial feedback here, or more likely preparation for a subsequent application specific.
Definitely preparation for subsequent.
Absolutely. And the only thing that I would ask potentially here, and I understand that these changes were made quite quickly on the coattails of the ARB feedback, is that there is a minor change to the 78 Prospect Avenue proposal of impervious surface, just via one of the 2 potential changes that might occur at the 53 Bellevue property, which would impact a minor amount of impervious space on the 78 Prospect area. The goal is,
I think you need to explain that this is on a corner.
they're 2 contiguous lots. I'm
Right.
happy to explain.
Right, right.
It's not a corner, they're 2 contiguous
One's
lots.
on Bellevue and one's on, yeah.
Sorry, I'm happy to step back a second. So, the 53 Bellevue property is contiguous to the Prospect Avenue property. The Prospect Avenue property has a garage on it that sits right on the sidewalk, and it has been my goal all along to get parking to the rear of both of the structures, to not have them front of street parking. So the first proposal that at least we have, and I will share for follow-up, essentially targets that goal of having all parking for both properties in the rear. That is my goal. The property is from 1905 and was built by a mason, so he did not withhold wide and big. So there is not enough room on either side of the property to bring a driveway up from the back. And since my intent and my history for the last 20 years is to own and keep the properties that I have and upgrade them, I have no intention of selling either of these properties. I'm just looking for a single-family home that is more appropriate for raising a family, and the existing Bellevue property is essentially all been upgraded now and it's ready to be essentially rented.
Mr. Curtis, can I just ask you a question?
Sure can.
How does this differ from the application from about 18 years ago?
The original proposal 18 years ago was linked to doing essentially front of yard driveway, and I was never a fan of that. I still am not a fan of it, even though a lot of the properties on that street do have some front of house parking. I believe aesthetically that it's more important that you address the parking, but do it in a healthy way. And that original proposal was essentially that, front of street, or front of house parking for 53 Bellevue.
Okay, I'm looking at notes that we've had, because it looks like there was an application, we can talk about this after, in 2000, to construct a single-family home on 78 Prospect, which was actually filed under the 53 Bellevue address, and that application was denied. So that's why I was trying to, I want to look at all of what was before in terms of those two. So I think that's
We've
just
seen
what
this before.
But, yeah,
Not even in the last few years. but
Yeah.
we did. Okay.
understood.
Okay,
So with permission, can I at least exchange these, or would you rather that we just do it electronically? These are essentially the two proposed plans. One is back of house parking for 53 Bellevue,
all right.
with slight modification to the Prospect, so I showed them both. And then the other is front of house parking, which is not my preferred option, just because of the dynamics and the topography of that property. It does not lend itself to essentially having comfortable parking that is front of house.
So we're gonna ask you to submit it through the planning department, okay, again. We don't accept anything at the meeting. And you have plenty of time to get it in for next month's meeting, so
Sure.
just be conscious of the dates.
Thank you.
That would be
Understood, and I recognize that this was the level of at least dialogue and familiarity that we were gonna achieve here, so.
Let me just ask, is there anyone else here to speak on 78 Prospect? I don't think so, okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank
See you
you.
next month. ZBA 2018, Singh Property Group, 77 Broadway.
Javier Hernandez, architect for the project. Peter Chernoff, owner of the property.
One thing I wanted to, before,
77.
we also own 75 Broadway, 76 Broadway across the street, where we just commenced construction, and 80 Broadway. I was hoping, do we have the
Sir,
photos?
could you just introduce yourself?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm Peter Chernoff, managing member of Sing Sing Property Group LLC. Jamie, do we have the
It's in the,
Go back, I think it's
no, these are the
75?
architect, do we have the actual photos?
yeah.
I just wanted to show you just briefly a few photos of what we've done so far at 75 Broadway next door, which is the old Collier Mansion. We did a full rehab of it, completely redid the exterior, insulated the walls, stuck with, the original wood floors. Really did a great job, and it's what we're looking to continue over there on Broadway. 77 is right next door.
All
We're hoping.
single-family houses?
This is a two-family, and I think I just lost my mic. We're hoping to have 77 be a two-family as well.
Okay.
That said,
Okay.
take it away.
Okay, 77 Broadway is a 5,500 square foot lot. It had an existing one resident house, and we're proposing in addition about 11 by 15, about 360 square feet in volume. What we're doing is we're squaring off the footprint of the property. There is an existing variance required. The variance that was required because it's already too close to the property. We're not increasing the nonconformity. It's the line of the property will stay actually at the addition is 3'9", and existing right now is 3.41. Also want to let you know that in this property we have gone already to the planning board. We have received condition approval, conditional use approval for a two-family house. Also, we have resolved at the level the parking issue with them, and also we have architectural review board approval. And what was the other approval I received last week in the rain?
No,
EAC.
BAR, what EAC you were there as well.
EAC,
EAC gave a
yeah.
positive letter.
So all of these, we have received positive letters. Also, we have received one of our neighbors, I think, sent a letter supporting the project. They really appreciate what Peter's been doing with the neighborhood. And again, we're not increasing the non-conformity. This seems to be, I'll also show you this is the proposed elevation of the addition on the rear.
Also, to the extent that it's relevant, I am, other than Hugo, who sent in a letter of support, I am the neighbor on all sides. 75 Broadway, 28 North Malcolm is my home, which abuts it on the rear, and then the properties across the street are me as well. Or shall I say our Sing Sing Property Group LLC, but effectively me. So what we're trying to accomplish here really is to sort of make two side-by-side houses, if you will. So the rear house would be kind of a cool little townhouse where we've taken the fence down between 75 and 77. You've got nice green space in between, and you'd be walking back to that rear door.
Okay, so the list of zoning variances that they need.
I think we need a side yard and side yard variance.
They've got a side yard, Madam Chair, they've got both side yards. Jimmy, you've got habitable floor, I'm just trying to understand what that one meant here.
That's not required, that's not.
Okay, that's not there?
No.
So we're just looking at the side yard and both
Yeah.
side yards, combined side yards?
Yep.
That's already an undersized lot. 'Cause it's, so the lot width is below, as you know, as well as the lot size is below.
What's the parking variance?
There is no parking in the variance.
There's no parking. What there's gonna be is an arrangement between the various properties, Mr. Chair, that was discussed with the planning board, so that there will be sufficient parking at adjacent properties to provide parking here. There'll be a lease agreement that will be provided so that there'll be parking, it'll be at least a 10-year lease to provide the necessary off-street parking for the building, and not to deprive one of the other buildings.
I don't have a problem doing a permanent easement
Even better.
whatever's required.
That'd be-
That would be, the intention would be that it would be a permanent thing,
Even
not a
better.
10-year fix.
Be nice to see it.
We have looks like about 8 spaces of parking behind 75 when all said and done, but behind 76 and 80, without mapping it out, we probably have 20 parking spaces back there. It goes all the way, very deep, all the way back to the Sing Sing Kill. We have a 1,000 square foot garage.
And you're planning on staying there yourself?
No, I'm at 28 North Malcolm,
Which is right,
which is, you know, up into the rear.
right.
Probably park 100 cars there, but that's not my intention.
Don't want to be a parking lot? Okay, all right. Is there anyone here to speak on 77 Broadway? You did get some letters up too. Any questions?
No.
All right, so I'd like a motion to close this public hearing.
Motion to close.
Do I have a sec- All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any questions down there?
No questions from me.
Questions? Questions?
No, the common problem with the small lots.
Right. And we like the fact that you're doing that work down there. So it's good.
Thank
All right, a motion to approve the variances for 77 Broadway.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, ZBA 2218, Ossining Volunteer Fire Group, 9 Clinton Avenue. What did I say, fire? I'm sorry, ambulance. Not to be confused with the fire department in this particular community.
Either organization's here to help.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good.
Please give your name and address.
Dan Ciarcia from Ciarcia Engineering, representing the applicant, Ossining Volunteer Ambulance Corps. And I'm joined this evening by Chief Nick Franzoso from the Ambulance Corps. What the Ambulance Corps did was purchase a parcel that's not contiguous to their main headquarters. It was a home across the street. They purchased a lot and knocked the house down. So the purpose of their purchase was to provide additional parking for members of the Corps. And in order to accomplish that, we prepared a site plan. We've been before the planning board to present, and they granted approval a couple of weeks ago. So we're before your board this evening, trying to just do some cleanup on some of the nonconformities we have with the zoning code. So notably, we're in the T-zone. The property is located at 9 Clinton, which is directly across the street. We're bordered by the Walgreens on 2 sides, which is in a different zone. The T-zone begins at the subject property and then continues up Clinton. So we have one residential neighbor, and the things that we need is we are not complying with the maximum impervious. The zone allows 40%, and as we're proposing a parking lot, we're really at 96%. Our intent is to pave the entirety of the property. We're not paving, we're installing retaining walls to facilitate a level parking area. The other sections of the code relate to the 4-foot setback from residential properties, allowing parking in the front yard, although I don't know even if it's applicable because there's no primary structure there, so that it's all yard. There's no front yard delineated.
We have a big thing with front yard parking.
So I guess
It's like a side yard, but yeah.
yeah, so we don't have a residence there. And finally, the requirement of the code relates to screening from residential properties. So those are what we're requesting relief for to implement our project.
Okay. Is there anyone here to speak on 9 Clinton?
Me.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Ivani Lorraine. I'm their neighbor from 11 Clinton Avenue. My main concern is that their property line is right next to my garage, and I would definitely prefer the ambulance corp would put up a fence for privacy reasons, liability reasons, and if I ever decide to sell my house, my property, this way new owners can come and that option can be protected. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak on, yes, ma'am?
Whitney Boyer, representing Clinton Terrace Apartments, 70 Croton Avenue. We are just simply here to express our support of the project, being that the ambulance corps serves the community so faithfully. It would be a nice way for the community to give back. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am? Can you drop that mic a little? No, not you.
Hi.
Just bring the mic down a little bit. Yeah, so we can hear you. Yeah.
Hi, Arlene Clark, 15 Tompkins. I live right around the corner. I don't have a problem with it. I'm just asking is it for just the ambulance or I can get a spot? I get too much tickets, so I'm just looking at a spot. I go to every minute to see if I can get a spot somewhere because I do a 16-hour shift. I work in healthcare. When I get home at 11, there's no parking, so if I could just slide in, that's all I want.
Probably not the right place to come in.
I go everywhere to see if I can get one. I can't get one from anyone, so I'm just trying to stuff myself in there.
All right.
I don't begrudge the effort, Madam Chair. Let the board know that one of the elements of the planning board's approval was that the parking area would only be used by employees or volunteers. And in fact, when, and actually the use is being tied to the continuation of all that across the street. So unfortunately, while we'd love to provide you with that parking, it can't be at that location.
Well, I suppose the upside to this is getting the volunteers off the street that may free up some street parking, which is the whole purpose of this, so.
That is an upside. What do you, my question would have been, what about a fence?
Yeah,
It would have been my
mine too.
question from the
Well,
get-go.
I guess there was some discussion early on whether they wanted to have some elbow room in their driveway. It was my understanding that there had been some contact with the neighbor. So whatever they prefer, if a fence is to go up, then,
Fences make good neighbors, right?
so I think it would be just a matter of determining the material, whether chain link with slats or a stockade fence or some other material. And it's just a question of how do we come to an agreement as to what that fence is.
Only because I think the young lady was correct in saying that, you know, should she ever want to sell her house or anything, that delineator of the property lines would be important. And plus, if you have a fence and somebody's, you know, you guys, they come and go in the middle of the night and stuff, I would, you know.
No, but I have no objection. The only reason we weren't showing it is we needed to just shake out what the preferred solution
Does that
was.
eliminate one of your variances? No, still, right? No, right?
No.
Well, the
But you
screening
still
one, I
have it-
suppose.
Well,
Well, the fence
the
could be a
screening,
screen.
but you still wouldn't,
Yeah.
you still only have you're not really screening off of Walgreens either, right?
No.
No.
Okay.
Dan, can I
Still
And I,
say
and I
yes.
did believe the screening only refers to adjacent residential properties, not adjacent
Okay.
commercial.
Dan, can I just ask you, with the screening, it also talks about, I think, over 5 spaces. How many spaces are you actually anticipating?
Well, we showed these 4, which would be tandem spaces,
Okay.
and then we showed a space back here, which would, I think it was probably gonna be like your trailer, like equipment that doesn't move very often. Of course, I mean, I suppose, since they're all coming out of the same place, you know, maybe you could sneak another space, you know, somebody else, as long as everybody is in contact, they could really block each other in and work it out as needed.
Well, you are gonna have lines, right? If you pave the lot,
Yeah,
you put
yeah,
lines in, striping it?
But, you know, if you look at like these 2 spots, you couldn't really, it's a little tight over here to get the trailer out. So it relies on everybody parking there, being under one roof and making it work. But the intent would be to stripe these 4 spaces. And this would really just, I don't know that there's any point in striping it, it's just a place to park the trailer.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak on Clinton? 9 Clinton? Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any, Marcel, any discussion on this?
No.
Bob?
This proposed layout, I'm presuming that we have an approval from the planning board on this.
Planning board has given conditional use permit approval for the work that's being done with, again, that the parking area is only to be used by employees and volunteers. Again, they gave that at their last meeting in September.
Okay, but at that time, was anything discussed about a fence between the properties?
I don't think, Bob, at that point it was brought up, so we could you could have a condition here.
We could put a condition in our
Condition of yours.
resolution. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that was,
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
It needs a fence because
Especially for that next,
And
it
the
is
next
very
door neighbor
close.
to have what she.
right,
should have privacy.
that's to be determined.
Yeah.
Right. Greg?
No, I agree. I think the fence is a good compromise and support that.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so I think what we want to do have a positive resolution for the variances needed, as long as we have the stipulation on the fence in there.
Understood. We'll make that a condition.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Not at all. ZBA 2318, 240 North Highland Avenue.
Oh.
He's back.
You can't get rid of them.
No one gets to.
Good evening. J.B. Hernandez, architect for the project. Maria Del Monte, owner of the house. This is it's an existing approximately 700 square foot home on North Highland, right behind the pizza place. This property is a large size property, it's 32,000 square feet. There is a small house. Like I said again, it was an existing house, the original house. It's about 700 square feet. So we have done some renovation to the house, and now we're looking to add a second floor, being that it was such a small house. So it's going to be a living area on the first floor and the bedrooms upstairs. We went through the process of starting the work, and then talking to the building inspector. We found out that part of the existing house is like 6 feet into the, I believe, 6'9" into the setback. So even though we're not increasing the first floor, we're just going up, we feel the need that a variance will be required to obtain that. Again, those are the, right, that's the elevations of the house. This is what it's going to look like if you're looking out from Highland Avenue. Even though you won't see it from Highland Avenue, that's the view, the front view. We feel that this, the variance is improving the looks of the house, it's improving the neighborhood, and this is again, it's an existing, in which is adding the second floor. So I don't know if the board has any questions or.
Is there anyone else here to speak on 240 North Highland Avenue? All right, not seeing anyone. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing on 240 North Highland Avenue?
Motion to close public hearing on 240 North Highland.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm gonna find this one. Okay, so you're looking for
This will be a front yard variance.
front yard.
The house doesn't move, but it needs the front yard because of the
Right.
addition.
Right. So its requirements are 30 feet and you have 23.8 feet.
Yeah.
Any questions? Myself? Bob?
This is a single family?
Yes.
And it's gonna stay a single family?
Yes.
You'd be struck with what comes before us. All right, thank you very much. Do I have a motion to approve the variance for 6.2 feet on the front yard?
Make a motion, we approve variance.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jackpot night for you, buddy. Okay, that is our last of our applicants this evening. So I want a motion to approve the minutes and the resolutions from the September 12th, 2018 meeting.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Who was here?
Second.
That's right.
All in favor?
Anyway.
Okay. And there's a couple of us that, no, you were here, came in. You might not have been here if you were here. Thank you very much, have a wonderful month. We'll see you on November, believe it or not, November 13th will be our next zoning board meeting. We want to make sure that everyone remembers that there are date requirements and time requirements to get applications in. No application will be seen unless it is complete with every I dotted and every T crossed. So it's been a long day. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful Halloween and be safe.